Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and kind of feels like gamers are starting to stack together a few wins. You know, last week we talked about Silksong and how it has studios scared of its $20 pricing. And now, here we are again because PlayStation seems to be listening in on a rather volatile back and forth between the industry and gamers. This is absolutely fantastic news for next generation, so make sure to stick around. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with Square Enix and two of their most anticipated games being Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 and also the long-awaited Kingdom Hearts 4. I mean, I swear fans of that series are just kind of used to the long waits by this point, but it sounds like both games are making steady progress. During a Final Fantasy Ever Crisis stream, Square Enix's Tetsuya Nomura gave fans a small update for both games in which we can read here. He mentioned, but we are indeed making a lot of progress with the game, referring to Final Fantasy VII Part 3. We already have decided when we will make the announcement as well, and we will stick to that time schedule, so don't worry, but please wait for it. On that same note, I'm seeing a lot of comments on Kingdom Hearts 4. We are making great strides and going according to schedule. Now, like I said, I mean, Kingdom Hearts fans are kind of used to the long waits by this point. Between the release of 2 and 3, there was actually a 14-year gap, which is honestly just kind of mind-blowing when you start to think about it. Now, thankfully, there were various smaller releases in between that time frame, several of which were actually pretty good games, but it's definitely a series that has a record of making fans wait, and it honestly wouldn't shock me at all if Kingdom Hearts 4 is still a few years away. I mean, I hate to say that because I actually really like this series, but I'm going in with low expectations that we'll get it in our hands anytime soon. Hey, prove me wrong, Square Enix, and I'll be thrilled. However, I think what he said about Final Fantasy VII Part 3 is a good sign, and it also correlates with some of the things that they've mentioned in the past. They've already indicated a few times that Part 3 won't take as long as Part 2 did. They already have some assets from Rebirth. They already have the story written out, and now it's just kind of about putting everything together. So I think we could get an official reveal a lot sooner than some people expect. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to release next year, but either way, this being a modern AAA game, it very much seems like it will have a much faster turnaround than basically most of the rest of the industry. Now, if only this would happen more often, because it would lower budgets drastically and also give gamers something to look forward to every few years instead of every 6+ years like we've been seeing. Now, we also got some new details for the Lenovo Legion Go 2. I mean, typically when you think about PC gaming handhelds, there's the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and then you have the Lenovo Legion Go. I'd say those right now seem to be the big three, with Lenovo being the most niche of them all. The Legion Go's big differentiating factor, though, is its 8.8-inch VRR display. I mean, it's a crazy big handheld, the biggest mainstream handheld right now, and its follow-up is sticking with a similar but improved display. It'll once again be 8.8 inches, but this time will be a 144Hz OLED. And yes, it once again will support VRR, which is actually very interesting for an OLED PC device, but this will come at a major cost. The big talking point right now isn't its display or even its impressive specs, but rather it's the price, which will come in at $1,050 for the low-end Ryzen Z2 model. Yeah, that's just the low end, because the Z2 Extreme model will come in at an eye-watering $1,480. I mean, like I said, the Legion Go was already the most niche of the most notable PC gaming handhelds, but with this price, it seems like they are directly targeting the enthusiast market. It seems like that's their main target audience. I mean, Nintendo and Valve kind of has that lower end on lockdown with more affordable prices, though they do have their own stores to be fair. And then you have ROG, and they have a good hold on that $500 to $1,000 range, which is something that I suspect will be the case with the Xbox Ally as well. So maybe Lenovo sees all that, and they're just kind of looking at that next pricing tier as their go-to. But Right now, fans are not happy about this price at all. So let me know what you think about this. Do you think it's just too much, or do you think it'll find its own audience with that massive 8.8-inch OLED display? All right, now we also got a small update for Borderlands 4. It's going to be out here in just a few days from the making of this video, but the good news here is that it's already topping the Steam charts. It's right now listed as the #1 best-selling pay-to-play game, beating out the likes of Hollow Knight Silksong, which is certainly notable considering its massive success just last week. This information doesn't necessarily mean that Borderlands 4 will have more success than Silksong, or that it'll have more concurrent players when it releases. However, what it does tell us is that there does seem to be a lot of hype built up for its release. So we'll kind of keep track of its concurrent count later this week when it releases. Borderlands 2 right now is the best performing entry in the series at 123,000 concurrent players on Steam, so we'll see if Borderlands 4 can match that or even beat it here in just a few days when it releases on September 11th. Okay, so let's go and get into the big story of the day, which I view as a major victory for gamers, and that's because reportedly the PlayStation 6 will have a detachable disk drive. Yeah, this was leaked by Tom Henderson over on Insider Gaming, which has a great track record specifically for PlayStation hardware. Tom Henderson was among the first to leak things about the PlayStation Portal and the PlayStation 5 Pro as two such examples. So, there is a reason to believe this information, and according to him, he reported that identical to the PlayStation 5 and its detachable disk drive, customers will be able to buy the console individually as a digital console bundled with the PlayStation 6 as a traditional console, or upgrade later by purchasing the detachable disk drive separately. According to one source, unless things are changed at last minute, PlayStation is firm on the decision because the disk drive for the PlayStation 5 hit all the company's internal targets. Again, it was reiterated by the source that the decision was made to reduce manufacturing and shipping costs during uncertain times, likely referring to the tariff trade war. These quote-unquote uncertain times have seemingly influenced PlayStation's decision on the look of the next PlayStation 2, as rumblings suggest that this time around, the PlayStation 6 will have a much simpler design than its predecessor, again to maximize efficiency, shipping, space, weight, and so on. Now, honestly, I think a simpler design is probably going to be welcome news for a lot of fans. The PS5 design has always been somewhat polarizing online, so depending on what camp you sit in, this may be good news in its own right. Obviously, though, the big story is the detachable disk drive. A lot of people have been predicting that this will be the last generation for physical media. But as long as this report holds up, this very much says otherwise. It seems like Sony has seen enough data to support physical media for the PlayStation 6. Not only because the disk drive itself has sold well for the PlayStation 5, as reported here, but I imagine a lot of this decision also comes from the fact that there's still a good portion of games that are sold through physical units. If you look at what's happening with Nintendo as one such example, that's a huge story for the Switch too. Its game keycard situation has created a volatile situation for Nintendo and for third-party companies that supports their console. So far, game keycards haven't been selling well on the Switch 2, whereas true physical games have. And one thing that tells publishers is that they can't just simply bully gamers into buying whatever they put out in the market simply because. Physical collectors, or at least so far, seem to be dead set on buying true physical media. And if a company doesn't put out a true physical game, then these gamers seemingly don't mind skipping said game. Now that's important because one thing that Sony likes to do in situations like this is that they like to sit back and watch what happens to their competitors before they form their own strategy. This is something that Sony does quite often, so without a doubt, they're definitely listening in on this Nintendo keycard situation, and they're probably taking notes as they form their own next-generation strategy. And right now, they're probably thinking to themselves they don't want a similar controversy for the PlayStation 6, and it would probably be even worse if it was digital only. That type of backlash would not be good for a brand new console. However, I think most of this decision is still because the data itself tells them how important physical games still are. This report claims that the disk drive itself is selling well, but it also indicates that physical games are still selling well enough to support them for their next console. And I think that that's interesting in the sense that even though a lot of these companies have prioritized digital games for more than a decade, especially this generation, physical games are still thriving and surviving for another generation, or at least potentially. And I'd say that's a huge win for gamers. I'd also say that it's just nice for anybody who already buys physical games for the PlayStation 5, because there was previously a concern that the physical PS5 library wouldn't carry over to the PlayStation 6. But with this news, you can buy physical PlayStation 5 games with at least a good indication that we will be able to play them on the PlayStation 6 as long as it's backwards compatibility, which kind of seems to be the plan right now. Now, for those that do prefer digital games, though, then I still think that this is great news, because Sony is giving you the option of which you prefer. If you prefer digital, then you'll be able to get the PS6 console even cheaper because you won't have to purchase the disc drive itself. Though, I will point out that over the course of the generation, you might actually pay more because you can sometimes find a better deal for a physical game. So I'm just going to point that out. But either which way, I think this is great news for gamers. Now, admittedly, though, I'm not sure if I'm expecting the same great news for the next Xbox. They're kind of the wild card in this entire situation for me, just because they do seem to be much more prepared for a digital-only future with the likes of something like Game Pass. But I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll do a detachable disc drive as well, which that would be great. Again, especially when you start to talk about backwards compatibility. Let me know, though, how do you view this situation? Anyways, though, that's going to be for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.